This is the Audio Fit Test Podcast, where we change the game for beginners to health and fitness. No fads, no gimmicks, just solid advice that will get you results. In this episode, we look at running for beginners, where to begin, and how to improve all the way up to marathon running. Here's Jim of jimshealthandmuscle.com, who once ran 1.5 miles in 8 minutes and 22 seconds.
Hi, I'm Jim from jimshealthandmuscle.com and audiofittest.com, and in this episode I want to talk about the go-to choice of exercise for the beginner to fitness, exercise and weight loss. I know from a lot of personal experience in fitness, weight loss and exercise industry, and from my observation that when someone decides that they need to lose weight, in a lot of cases, going out for a run is probably the first idea. Of course, everyone knows that runners are lean, and it seems to be a given that if you're a runner, you are fit and healthy. On the face of it, this is pretty much true, but there is so much more to it than that. If you don't plan it right, and you don't understand what can happen if you just dive right into your first run, there's a very big chance that you'll never actually get any progression, and even worse than that, you may even decide that running is not for you. So whether you're thinking about running to lower your body fat percentage, or you have a goal such as completing a half marathon or even a full marathon, there's always a starting point. Okay, if you've heard any of my podcasts before, listened to, or indeed read any of my fitness books and guides, you'll know that I like to advise based on my own experience. If this is the first time we've met, I hope the approach is something that you can work with. My full experience in the world of running for general fitness and later doing long distance running, that became a big part of my job, was some kind of crazy journey, and it started when I was a youngster. So when I was around 14 years old, I decided that I wanted to be fitter, stronger and more physically capable for a number of reasons, but like so many other people, going out and starting running seemed to be the obvious option. So off I went running, not knowing anything about fitness, muscle groups, running form, breathing techniques, and as you can imagine, it didn't take long for me to give that up in favour of something else. That something else turned out to be weightlifting, and at that time I was in the fortunate position of having a friend of the family close by to coach me on powerlifting, but that's another story for another day. So when it came to running, I did what nearly everyone does and made some big mistakes when I first set out on my beginner running journey. I didn't plan, I didn't research, I didn't ask for advice, I did too much too soon, and ultimately I destroyed my motivation. Now these podcast episodes are supposed to be less than 20 minutes, so I'll try and quickly summarise my journey from struggling beginner runner to being capable of running long distances and earning 1.5 miles time of 8 minutes and 22 seconds, which looking back at it now is pretty impressive. Now at 16 years old, I wanted to join the army, as I was no academic and it didn't seem that I had much going for me really. It seemed that the army could offer a lot to a guy like me, so I went away to do the fitness tests to see if I was suitable. One of the tests was 1.5 miles run, and I think it still is. Now, to pass this, you had to complete it in something like 13 minutes, 12.5, 13 minutes, something like that, which at the time I spectacularly failed to do. And after the weekend and the tests, I was sent away and had 6 months to train before retrying. In this time, I ran 2 miles every day and managed to get a 2-mile circuit done in something like 17 minutes. Now, 2 miles in 17 minutes, if I could do this would be good enough to pass the next time I tried. So on my second attempt, I passed the entrance test and joined the army. During my basic training, I struggled with running, but I wanted to try out for paraselection. Now, paraselection is an insane course and you have to be very fit. And I was told by my instructors that I shouldn't even try, as there was no way I'd pass. Also, during basic training, I'd go for extra cardio sessions with a friend who also wanted to give para selection a shot. Now, when the time came for the actual para selection to begin, we both started something called the Beat Up course. Now, this was about 5 weeks of hard training before the actual selection process started, and it's designed to get rid of the guys who don't want it bad enough or not really serious about becoming an airborne soldier. The Beat Up course is pretty brutal, but I learned more during this process as I had ever learned about myself and what it's needed to become a real long distance runner. Now, it was during this para selection process that I managed to get a time of 8 minutes and 22 seconds to cover 1.5 miles. So from a guy who did a good job of failing when it came to beginner running and not being able to cover 1.5 miles in 13 minutes to hitting the 8:22 mark for 1.5 miles, going for 10-mile plus runs 5 days every week and being more than confident in much longer distances proves that it's possible to do. Now, I never say all of these things to brag or boast about, I'm the best at everything, because I'm not. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not the bloke who's naturally good at everything either. I'm just a normal dude who gets up after getting knocked down and tries again and again, and everybody has the ability to do this. Yes, of course, the more times you have to get back up after being knocked down, the harder it seems. So my aim with all of my fitness guides, not just my running guide, is to try and help readers, or listeners in this case, steer clear of the mistakes that I've made to keep the amount of time you have to pick yourself up to a minimum. Ultimately, getting you where you want to be in fitness quicker and easier. So if you are a beginner and you want to get out and start running, where do you start? How to beginner running, basically. So whether you want to start running to lose weight or build cardio fitness, or you've got an idea of, or you want to try and run a 5k or 10k or even a full marathon, the principles are always the same. This is the approach that I would have, knowing what I know now from my past experience. Number 1, I would plan a 1 mile route, preferably a circuit that starts and finishes at your front door. 2, plan a running schedule. This means what time and days you want to run. Number 3, make sure you have some good running shoes. Number 4, don't run right away. Walk around your route and make a note of the halfway point. Number 5, protect your feet. So don't ignore hot spots or blisters. You need your feet in good condition if you want to be a runner. Number 6, be aware of your running form. Now, your running form has priority over distance, time, and everything else. So in a nutshell, that's where you should get started. Well, in my opinion anyway. But let's break it down a little bit. So number 1, plan a 1 mile route, preferably a circuit that starts and finishes at your front door. Planning's important in whatever fitness goal you set out to achieve, so running and jogging goals are no exception to this. I always see the planning part as one of the major pillars of fitness, because spending time in planning, you have a proper direction, and you will also not only be building your motivation, but you'll be safeguarding it too. The reason for planning a route beforehand is that you'll know how far you've gone, and you can use this to build on. By having a short circuit and identifying the midpoint, you'll also be able to monitor your progress and use checkpoints or milestones to help you later on. Also, by having a midpoint on your route, you'll know that as soon as you pass it, you're closer to your finish line. In my experience, this is great for the mental part of running too. And believe me, the mental part of running is a big thing. So, number 2, plan a running schedule, or schedule, say however you want to say it. What time and days you want to run. If you want to progress with your running, you shouldn't have the attitude of, I'll just go out when I have time. Because also in my experience, there's never enough time, so you should plan your running sessions to fit in and allocate specific times and days for them. For example, if I were to start a real running program now, I'd plan to run 3 times per week, first thing in the mornings on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. I might have to get up a bit earlier on these days, but so be it. This works for me and I'd fit it in. Everyone's different and has different lifestyles, so it may be that someone else might run after work on Mondays and Tuesdays and before breakfast on Saturdays. And this is something that everyone's got to figure out for themselves. But the more convenient you can make it, the better for longevity and then also progression, and you'll actually get somewhere. The next point, make sure you have some good running shoes. Running shoes are pretty important. If you have bad feet and don't have the support where you need it, you can't run, and it's the end of the story. You can get running shoes from many places, but in my opinion, the best thing to do is to go to a shop that specialises in running footwear and get advice from the people that are passionate and knowledgeable about the sport. Everyone has a slightly different style of running, and weaknesses in form, running technique, might be helped by using the correct footwear for support in the right places. I know of shops in my local area that will have you run on a treadmill before selling you a pair of trainers, so the right shoe can be advised for the style of running you have. And if you can find one of these shops, get yourself over there. I will say that if you identify a weakness in your form, however, you should always be aware of it and make sure that you are always trying to correct it. So bad running form can also give you aches and pains where you don't need them, and if done for long enough, they can cause long-term problems. The last thing that I want to note about running shoes is that there is a method of barefoot running that, in my opinion, has quite a lot of merit. By all means, look into this, but it's a fairly big subject and maybe one for another day. There are some people that will be totally against barefoot running for whatever reason, but when you look at the theories behind it, it's kind of solid, I think. But anyway, let's get on to the next point. Don't run right away. Walk around your route and make a note of the halfway point. One of the biggest problems when starting running is when people do too much too soon. If you've not been running before and you just get right out there and try to run a mile, you could kill your motivation within the first 5 minutes. For the sake of this podcast episode, I will assume that anyone listening is not a born athlete and is not naturally gifted when it comes to fitness. If you do what I did when I started running, you won't know what your starting pace is, you won't know how long your muscles can sustain a jog for, your lungs will not be ready for this type of exercise. So if you just get out there and try to run your mile, you may exhaust yourself, and within the first few minutes, this can be disastrous for your goals. So the best thing that you can do is start walking around your route at your planned time with your new running shoes. Get familiar with the route, play around with the walking pace, and start to throw in a jogging stint at the midpoint or near the end. But you must always progress. Always try to do a little bit more than you did in your previous running session. This is how you start, and this is how you progress. Some may get to the point where they're jogging several miles in a few weeks, whereas others will take a little bit longer to get there. But that's no problem. Remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Okay, the next point, protect your feet from blisters. If you have new trainers, you may find that there are several hotspots or even blisters that pop up. It's important to remember that the more you run, the harder your feet will get, but it's also important to know when to act on a hotspot or blister. Although some people might think blisters are a minor thing, they can be a major issue for runners. So if you notice any areas of your feet that are rubbing, you should get on it right away. It may be because your shoes are not laced up properly, it may be a tag inside the shoe, you may have a fold in the socks you're wearing. The point here is that as soon as you notice something not quite right, you should do everything you can to try and fix it. Most high-end running shoes these days, to be fair, won't have extra folds, stitching or tags on the inside that can cause this, but as I said, everyone's different and different running styles may present different problems. The best thing that I have found for general protection from blisters when running is to wear 2 pairs of socks. One thin, fairly tight pair and a thicker pair over the top. Believe me, I've tried a lot of things, and I know that this is a big issue and everyone has different ideas. Tape, you can buy Compeed, you can buy special blister plasters, but I've used all of those things, and the best thing that I've ever come up with is this 2 pairs of socks. Honestly, give it a shot, it's a miracle cure. Okay, point 6, be aware of your running form. Form has priority over distance, time and everything else. As mentioned before, your running form is vital if you want good progression, whilst minimalising the chance of injury. Lots of things can happen to your body if you get used to running with bad form. I found this out the hard way. Like I say, I'm not perfect and I've made my fair share of mistakes and done a lot of stupid things as well, but as I said lots of times in this post, everyone's different and almost everyone will have different weaknesses. It is worth doing research into correct running posture. If you're unsure or have the chance to go and see a coach, you should definitely do this. Some common things to look out for: pronating of the feet, leaning forward, this can damage your lower back, heel strike can be too aggressive, your head and neck could be tilted forward or even backwards, your shoulders could be hunched. These points are a good starting point in making sure your form is correct. Well, this is important stuff, and if you feel that your form is out, don't skimp on spending time trying to correct it. Now, I do go into all of this stuff and a lot more in my book, Marathon Training and Distance Running. So if this has been interesting to you and you want to know more, there's a bunch of information in there. There are also a bunch of personal accounts of mistakes that I've made and lessons I've learned in there too. So this was a short and sweet podcast, and hopefully it was useful to someone who's starting out running and just needs a little bit of advice to get started, but hopefully it was all digestible information and short, sharp points been made. As always, I'm happy to help where I can, so drop me an email if you've got any problems and I'll do my best to help out. Hopefully I'll get into a little bit more about running in future podcasts, but for now, thanks for listening and I hope to chat to you again really soon. Take it easy, Jim.